you know what you're anticipating. You know what I mean? So I think there's knowledge that comes along with it. And the more that you're around it and the more that you're around smart people, the more that you can pick up because there's some people in the game, dude, that are dangerous. There's the reason that a lot of bodybuilders just were falling over dead. Some of it too was because they were having to travel. And this is me, but I think a lot of it had to do with the vaccine and how it related to myocarditis. And there was, it was just a lot of hush hush. Nobody talked about it, but you don't just fall over dead for no reason. You know what I'm saying? So
No, and it was like, can you hear me okay still?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it was just like all of a sudden, all the bodybuilders, man, it was one after another, and it was all around COVID. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it all definitely had to do with the vaccine, 100%, man.
Yeah, and they were limited because in order for them to, pay their bills, they had to travel and they
Right.
had to have, a vaccine card or whatever to get to shows. And a lot of these guys are traveling to and from overseas. It's still kind of a pain in the butt for a lot of guys too to get to the shows that they're going to do. Um, just because of what the state of the world that we're in right now too. So it's kind of one of those that's just a weird situation. And I genuinely that's my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, of course, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like shit,
Yeah.
it is what it is, you know what I mean? Like if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it's got feathers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me it's a duck. So
Yeah. So, what do you have to say to like the people who, they're on TRT, but like they don't really consider themselves taking steroids? There's a lot of people that will say, "Oh yeah, I'm on TRT, but I'm not taking any steroids." But they're yet taking testosterone, which is, a steroid. So,
well, I would tell them this: like you couldn't perform in the Olympics, or you couldn't perform in anything with the NCAA because it's a controlled substance and it is considered a performance enhancing drug under the World Doping Agency. It's a PED. And you know what the funny part is semaglutide is a PED too.
I
So
know.
everybody taking Ozempic and everything else, it's like you guys realize like that's a PED. And
Right.
so I think we talked about that a little bit on the last
Yeah.
one. So
Yeah.
it's like you can talk about trash talking bodybuilders. It's like, oh, you're cheating, but if you can't say one without saying the other. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like it's still a crutch. Like if let's say if we were to remove all chemicals from the equation, it's going to come down to genetics at that point, and it's a genetic game.
Right.
But you know, I've been on TRT since I was 27. You know what I mean? So it's like I have had to have it in order to live a functioning normal life as a male and have a sex drive and you know be masculine in a lot of senses because my body stopped producing it because I was a fat kid for most of my life. So it's for me, it's about quality of life. I don't judge anybody for anything they do. Um, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's whoever's life they want to live. They have to live with the repercussions of it, not me. Like that's just the kind of the way that I've always viewed things in a lot of senses. So
Right. Yeah. So, what what are the risks versus benefits of it?
are we talking about just testosterone or are we talking about other
Just
compounds?
testosterone. Yeah, just test.
There's not. I mean, honestly, there's some risk. I would say the biggest risk is if you are predispositioned for blood clotting, and you have to really pay attention to your hemoglobin and hematocrit levels, which is the thickness of your blood. So, and a lot of ways around that is just from phlebotomy, so giving blood on a normal regimen, and you can get those, blood cell counts down and those levels down. That's one. Now, when you get to like just TRT and testosterone, those levels, there's not a whole lot of risk when you start jumping up into like the super physiological ranges of the 2000 to, and up levels. We're talking, you have to watch kidneys, your BUN and your creatinine levels and your EGFR, just to make sure that your organs are functioning. You have to watch your AST and ALT levels with your kidney, or not your kidney, your liver. So there's certain things that you just want to keep an eye on as your markers. But for the most part, the studies that we have shown that higher testosterone, even out of range on the high end, is safer than low testosterone. Low testosterone for heart function and kidney function has shown to increase your actual potential for cardiac arrest, stroke, things like that. So, and it's one of those things that's kind of newer. So there's no like extreme like 30-year study on this stuff. But what we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years is the trend of low T is very dangerous versus high T. So if you're talking about risk versus reward, I would much rather take the risk benefit of being on the high end of TRT versus the risk benefit of being on the low end, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So where should your average person, be sitting at, on a good end? Where should they be at? Their
It's gonna
ranges.
it's gonna depend, man. Like, and it's so individualized because everybody metabolizes um, testosterone differently, and so how they utilize it. So your total free testosterone or total testosterone and your free testosterone are a little bit different as to like what's available, how you aromatize. So for me, I aromatize at a very high level. So I have to use an AI, like an aromatase
Yep.
inhibitor, to offset the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. So what happens in your body is as your testosterone goes up, your estrogen tries to meet it. And for some people, it's a lot higher of an exchange than others. So even if your testosterone goes up, you may not be a high aromatizer, so you kind of chill right here, and you may not need as much to combat this. So that's what aromatizing basically is. And the thing is as your estrogen goes up, the effects of your testosterone go down. So you're in this constant yin and yang battle of like, all right, what's going to be higher? My testosterone's here, so I have to suppress this in order to get the effects of the testosterone. So it's kind of one of those. It's a blood work thing, and so like for me, like at a minimum, it's quarterly blood work. So every 4 months, I'm making sure that things are good. Sometimes I'll get them, every couple months. It just depends on what I'm doing. Like if I splash in another compound or I'm running some peptides or whatever, like I'll keep an eye on my kidneys and my liver, probably a little bit closer. But for the most part, like my blood doesn't thicken very much. So I'm kind of on the lower end or the middle range of the hematocrit and hemoglobin. So I don't have to do phlebotomy therapy very often, although once or twice a year is primo for me. And that's it. And that's for most people. Plus, you just need to get blood anyway. So
Yeah.
it's one of those. It's free and
Yeah.
it helps other people. So, but it's going to be like I say, to say a range for most men in their, and it's how you feel too. And the thing is that most people don't understand is even though you feel okay at, let's say, 300 nanograms per milliliter, which is just on the range. That's what it's measured in, is nanograms per milliliter. And I think it's like between 250 and 900. I think it goes a little bit higher in some ranges, but that's typically what it is. But if you're at like 300, you're considered in the normal range. But if you were at 900, you would feel like Superman. So who do you want to feel like? And the
Right.
thing is you may feel normal, but how many years has it been slowly decreasing to where you're at 300? And that's your new normal. You know what I mean? It's like It's no different than being like in a chaotic relationship. Like if you're in a chaotic relationship and that's kind of the way it's been for years, and then you go to like a normal relationship, you're like, I don't know. You feel like Ricky Bobby. You don't know what to do with your hands. Like, what? This isn't normal. You know what I mean? So you almost go into self-sabotage mode. But that's kind of how it is. Like, you don't know what normal is anymore because the scale's been skewed so much. If that makes any
Right.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, okay, so we can say that, your average person is somewhere between, hopefully 300 to 900, somewhere in that range. What about a bodybuilder's range? How high does that go?
It just depends. Like if you're in the off season and you're pushing, um, I've seen ranges in the 8,000.
Oh
I've
my
seen range.
God.
Yeah, I mean, those are guys that are doing 2 grams a week.
Yeah.
And it's not hell. Yeah, like when you're pushing for a pro card and you're getting paid, I guess the risk versus reward for that is higher for them than it is for a normal guy. Like I'm not going to push it that way because I got
Right.
kids
Right.
and
Yeah, it's definitely
yeah, I
not
got a
healthy.
job. Yeah,
Yeah.
so and that's the thing about bodybuilding that I think most people have the misconception. To get into show prep and like step on stage at an NPC show, it is not healthy. You're not doing your body any justice.
Right.
You know what I mean? You look great for one day, 2 days max, and that's it. After that, you're going to be, you'll look watery, and you still may feel good, and everybody will be like, "Oh my god!" But you'll compare yourself to what you were when you stood on stage and be like, I'm a fat mess.
Yes.
And then you
Yes.
go into the mental, like the post show blues, and you're like, man, I'm fat. You'll
Yeah.
always be fat compared to what you were when you stood on stage. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a funny, it's a funny effect that a lot of people do. But I mean, I would say most bodybuilders, your range is going to be, they hang around 2,000 to 4,000 somewhere in the off season and even into prep. And then they'll pull testosterone, of course, 2 weeks before show. They'll be on a short acting ester to dry out and that type of thing. So that's typically where it is. And that's for people that just aren't like pushing the envelope. But like I said, I've seen blood work from people where they're in the 8,000, you know, per nanogram per milliliter blood work, and it's just like, and
So
I can
that
tell
would
you
be
this.
like that. So 2 grams. So that's like a 10 cc bottle a week, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just depends on what it's dosed at. You know, you could if you're talking like an enanthate that's um, you know 300 milligrams per milliliter. You know, you're talking about almost 1,000. Per milliliter, or for 3 shots. So 3 cc's of that would be 900 milligrams. So you'd be just shy of a gram. So
Okay.
you'd be doing 3+ shots a week of that. So you're talking about going through a bottle every 10 days,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
or,
nuts, dude.
or, or not, no, well, I guess, yeah, that's right. Yeah, probably a bottle probably every 10 to 14 days, something like that.
That's insane, man. That is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's on top of guys doing a ton of growth hormone. They're running
Right.
insulin. I mean, it's an expensive hobby. Like motorcycle racing was way more expensive, but dude, it's expensive for guys that are like hardcore into doing this and pushing the envelope for, and they're chasing every source because you're not getting prescriptions for everything. So you're chasing real stuff on the black market, which makes it dangerous. And then you're chasing everybody with a real prescription for growth hormone. Like I can tell you crazy, crazy stories of like guys going to certain clinics and waiting outside to like find new people and offer them bribes for their prescription growth hormone. Like it's just nuts,
What?
dude. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Like they
nuts.
they would go, I'm telling you, they would go wait for people outside, like AIDS patients or people that like were like dwarfs and try to track them down, have conversations, like track them down on Instagram to get growth hormone. I swear to God, I'm not lying. It's absolutely true. And it's like, man, if you got to go to that level,
Right.
I'm out. You know what I mean? I'm just done with it.
Dude, you're strung out on steroids on growth, man. That's crazy.
Hey, you're chasing midgets through the Devon Street. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's
It's
crazy, man. I've never
yeah.
heard of that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff like behind the scenes of like, and it's not like. Here's the thing too: is like a lot of the top guys they have prescriptions.
Right.
They know that that's their profession, so everything they have is legal. The days of doing black market stuff is long gone. But it's like the guys coming up in the NPC, that's where all the crazy stuff happens. It's at the amateur level. It's not at the pro. When you get your IFBB pro card, you're at a different level. But it's the
Yeah.
guys coming up. That's where the weird stuff happens. Like,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of funky stuff. So I mean,
Tell us
like
some stories, dude. Tell us some stories.
there's a lot of male bodybuilders coming up that are like up and comers that'll probably get the pro card, a year or so, whatever it may be. But guys offering like to do just like flex with their shirt off, and it's not women asking this; it's guys. Like it's called gay for pay, and like they'll do all kinds of weird stuff, but they just want muscular men doing weird stuff. Like
What?
I had a friend, he got offered 10K for a guy to come give him a massage. Nothing sexual, just a massage. 10K. And he was like, no, man, I can't do that. I'm not that hard up for money. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. So it's just like, oh my gosh. There's all kinds of weird stuff that goes on behind the scenes like that, though.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
nuts.
Like they want like them to mail them like a pair of posing trunks that they wore, just like weird, like just weird stuff, dude. Like socks, like just it's just you think it's only like weird guys like in their mom's basement, like asking girls for their bra or panties or whatever. No, no, dude, it's guys wanting bodybuilders posing trunks. You know what I mean? It's got some tanner still left on it. Like what the heck? It's the
Yeah.
craziest shit ever.
That's a trip, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean about, most of those big guys, who have made it, they've got a doctor that prescribes them everything. And, I'm on TRT too, and they give me 200 milligrams a week. And that's fine. For my show, I did a lot, dude. And like, I, I damaged myself, I think. Like, my hair won't grow anymore. Like, it sucks. And my hair
Were
has
you,
always grown, and my hair
were
just
you were you
won't
doing
grow.
were you doing like thyroid stuff like T3 and things like
I
that
didn't do any
or
T3. I did clean. Um, I did clean. I did test clean. Uh, dang it. Primo. And master and Winstraw.
yeah, and
And
that's typical for like a
yeah,
first show type of thing. Yeah.
yeah. But and I think I ran like I think my test was like 600 milligrams a week. Um, but I was like, dude, it's not worth it really. I'm just gonna cruise at 200, put in more work at the gym, eat better, and just stay at 200, man. Because the risk, because I'll never be. Like you said, it's very hard to get, be IFBB, and for like me and you, like it's fun. It's a hobby. It's like what
Yeah.
you said, And so there's no reason to try to kill myself, you know. That's just how I feel, though.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I think the thing is that you just have to keep things in perspective. Like why do you start doing it? Like for me, I was a fat kid. I wanted to say, okay, I did this. I was able to get in this good a shape or whatever, and then peel all the fat off and kind of see what was underneath the hood of this machine or whatever. I've never been like I'm tall for a bodybuilder. You know what I mean? I'm like 5'9", 5'10" ish. and that's tall for a
Yeah.
bodybuilder. But my legs were free. My legs still, I mean, they still kind of are.
Oh,
Like
they're
whenever
big,
I train
dude.
them, and that's like, my coach was Matt Jansen, and so he, coaches Nick Walker and Sean Clare. He's coached Olympians.
Yeah.
Like he's phenomenal, and like I said, he grew up in Gainesville, and so he was just like, you got pro legs, like no doubt, no hands down. It's like I think it's a genetic thing because I was just toting around 400 pounds as a kid, like you know what I mean. So it's like an old like workhorse farm mule in a
Yeah,
sense.
they got some muscle. They got some work, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So and they've always grown really really easy. But over the years, like I've not had to really train them that hard. I trained them really really hard when I was competing, and they were freaky, but I've kind of tried to develop the rest of my physique too because I'm not I don't have a pretty physique like some guys have nice round pretty muscle. That is not me. I'm grainy. I got wide shoulders, a wide waist, so I have to make my back even wider. So it's just one of those things where to look proportional, it's always been genetically a little bit of a struggle, and that's the thing too. Like you're still fighting genetics with
Right.
bodybuilding. You know what I mean? No matter
Right.
what. So there's people that are just truly blessed with great genetics, and they don't have to fight the battles that you do. So I mean, even in the Jay Cutler days, Jay's waist was always wide. That's why he always had to have such a wide. He could never beat Ronnie because Ronnie's waist was a little bigger or a little tinier, and his I mean, it was Ronnie Coleman too, so he always came in peeled. But I mean, there's just you're always competing against nature, and so it was kind of one of those things where I understood where I stood, um, but it was still fun. I don't know if I'll ever compete again. I'll do mini cuts throughout the year. Like we're fixing to start one probably in the next month or two. I think that's just like a tip for most people that go. They diet way too long. Everybody diets all freaking year for some reason. And it's like, you're never going to grow. You got to be in the caloric surplus. I know guys that like, you don't want to get too fat and you'll just do kind of a mini cut here and there just to kind of stay lean and insulin, resistant, keep it down. But they'll stay in a growth stage for a couple years between competing. And then they look freaky the next time they step on stage. You're like, what the hell happened? Because that's another thing too. How fast can you put on really mature muscle? It takes time, dude. Like this is
Yeah.
a slow game,
Yes.
slow.
Yes.
So
For
that's
sure.
that's one of the things. But PEDs are a part of it, and I think people just gotta understand that going in. Um,
What do you think about insulin?
it's a I think most people don't need it unless they're really insulin resistant. Unless like it's very if unless you're using it with growth hormone, there's really not a need. If you're just using insulin independent of growth hormone, um, there's not a whole lot of need of it unless you medically need it, like if you're type 2 or something. But all it is really a nutrient transponder, and it's just pushing the nutrients into the cellular level. And it's dangerous. People dick with it, and they just don't know how to use it, and they go hypoglycemic and pass out and crash into things. And I mean, I've had moments when I was using it, I was like, man, this sucks. You know what I mean? And you'd be looking for cyclic dextrin carbohydrates to drink or gummy bears or whatever you could
Yeah.
possibly get. I'd always have Rice Krispie treats or just something, you know what I mean, to kind of get your blood sugar up because it would tank so fast. And it was weird. And the way growth hormone plays on your your blood sugar, it's tricky. So you got to be really, really careful with it. So, but like
Gotcha.
I say, unless you're using them in tandem, you really don't need it. You don't really need it.
Yeah. So really, I mean, unless you're trying to get like what I've always heard, like I've known a lot of people who've used it, but they've always been trying to get their pro card or like do some sort of show. Like your average person, you shouldn't use it. Your average person who just goes to the gym is trying to get big. I don't think should use insulin just because it is such a risk.
Yeah, it's that, and I mean, you don't really want to play with your pancreas and things like that too. You know what I mean? So it's one of those like it's the risk versus reward is not there at all. So
Right.
you just, like I say, unless you're highly competitive or you're trying to win, maybe if you were like competing and going to win an overall in the open class or something like that, sure, maybe. Um, but dude, like there's no real reason to, you know what I mean? And I've seen
Yeah.
people win the overall uh in the open class without it, you know. So
Yeah.
it's just I think the bad part in bodybuilding too is everybody's looking for the quickest way to the finish line, and it's just not there. Like unless you're just a genetic freak and you're truly gifted, it just takes time. You know what I mean? Like one of my buddies, he ended up getting his IFBB pro card or his pro card, whatever. And it took him probably 7 or 8 tries, and he finally got it at nationals. You know what I mean? A few years ago, it's just like
So
that's what it takes.
is it so he's got his card. Is he making money now in the sport?
He owns an extremely successful coaching company, and he's got a couple gyms. So, but as far as a bodybuilder, no, he just coaches. That's all he does. You know what I mean? So I don't know if he's gonna compete. I think he's a dad now, so he's probably not going to. Um, but that's the thing. Most guys don't. You know what I mean? It's a young man's game. Like all these guys, Flex Lewis to me was probably when I look at like the best all around physique in my time, even though he was in a 212, his physique was ridiculous. There was not very many flaws on Flex at all. And he retired. I don't even know. I think he won the Olympia 6 times, 7 times, something like that. The 212. I don't know. Something like that. But he was just a freak, man. And so when he got out, it's like a new era of new guys coming in, and it's a young man's game. You know, like even Nick Walker, I think he's 20 something. He's getting older. You know what I mean? So I don't even know when you peak. Not everybody's going to be a Ronnie Coleman or a Phil Heath, where you're going into your late 30s still winning Olympias.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's going to happen anymore. So, and I mean, that's the top 0.001% of guys, anyways. You know what I mean? On the entire planet.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you touched on it a little bit earlier, but Sam Sulek, I love the dude. I
Yeah.
I love him. Everybody hates on him, but I love him, man. But where do you think he's going in his career?
I don't know. He hasn't competed yet, has he?
I don't think he's competed, but you always see him doing his poses and everything, and he talks about like in a lot of his videos he talks about competing, but I don't think he's ever done a show.
I don't think he has either. He's got. I mean, for a young guy, he's got a good physique and a good build. Gosh, what was it? You're probably. I don't know if you ever remember. I think Cody Montgomery. He was a young kid coming up. He got his pro card. He won team nationals. I think he won the USA's in Vegas, but he didn't do. I think he maybe competed once or twice as a pro, but then he became a dad. You know what I mean? And so it's just like life changes. So it's a weird. And he had everybody talked about Cody and how freaky he was and how good because I had a buddy that was competing in Vegas in the same show as in the USA's whenever he competed, and he's like, dude, he's big in real life. He's big. And I was like, what? He doesn't look that big. He's like, no, he's big. And so he was. I think he competed and won. He's either as a heavy or a super heavy, and he was like 20 or 21 years old, something like that, and won. And it was so
Wow.
like that's a big deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But Sam he's a very likable guy just because he just does his thing. He's not trying to be anybody. He tries to be Sam. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's the coolest part about him is
Yep.
he's genuine because you've got everybody, dude, that's trying to be somebody else.
Right.
And I think authenticity sells these days because
Yep.
everybody's trying to just not be the next whoever you want to insert name.
Yep.
Um, and it's hard because we're in a conformist society. We want to run with our tribe, but he just stands out because he's just got a camera and he just records himself, and this is what he does, and this is why I do it. And I think there is a pureness to what he does, and he's just a genuinely likable guy. And whether or not he does something, I don't know. He's making a shit ton of money, dude, just posting on
Yeah,
YouTube. So he's
yeah,
making a killing.
he's making a killing, and he just signed that deal with what was that company? He just signed a deal with the company, man. Um,
Yeah,
I forget what it is, but I know it had to been huge.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I
And that's
know.
that's the thing. That's the thing too. Is like, what's his motivation too? You know what I mean? Like, he can just continue to do the same thing and keep stacking cash in the corner and never competing, and then never you. It's kind of like Rich Piana in a way too. You know, like Rich,
Yeah,
he competed early. But he never really did anything as a bodybuilder. He won Mr. California, but he never competed as a pro.
he just
And so
looked
it's
crazy.
he was just one of those crazy guys, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I think that there's this give and take that I don't know. I want him to do whatever's best for him, but I wouldn't imagine him standing on stage and competing. I think he's just doing it for himself, and he really likes it, and he documents it, and he's making a shit ton of money, and he's just going to keep doing his thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm sure he could show up at the Arnold Expo and his line would be out the door. You know what I
Dude,
mean?
you are so right about that, for
So
sure. I would
everybody
stand
would
in
want their
line to meet
picture.
him, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I'll be like, dude, take your hat off. Let's see what you look like underneath your hat. You know what I mean? Like, move your
Yeah,
hair. That's
yeah,
the big thing.
for
So, but
sure.
I think he's a good dude for sure.
Yeah. So what do you think about what do you think about SARMs? You said MK677 and what is it, S4, and yeah, what do you think about all the SARMs?
Peptides. So here's my opinion on peptides. Like, there's a difference between research chems and peptides. And SARMs and SERMs, there's certain androgen um, antagonists that the SARMs work in some sense, but I feel like they're kind of like, let's put it this way. When it comes to peptides, um, they're kind of like the sprinkles on a sundae. You know what I mean? You got your ice cream, you've got your hot fudge, you got your whipped cream, you got your cherry, and then a couple of sprinkles. That's all that they are. They don't make this huge drastic difference. Now there are certain things like with MK677, it stimulates the hell out of your appetite. So if you're trying to go into like a push phase where you're having to push food, the one thing that it does do is it suppresses your ghrelin and your leptin, the hunger signals from your brain, so you're able to eat more. But other than that, like, there's no, like, the physiological effects of them aren't that great. And that's the thing is there's still risk with them too, because they're still playing with um, your estrogen and your androgen receptors too. So there's ways to dull them out. Um, and so you just kind of want to keep things sharp for the things that do work when they come time. But there's certain things that I kind of play around with, like tesamorelin. I think is really good with ipamorelin. Whenever you're like deep in contest prep and you want to take that last little bit of fat layer off, especially in your abdomen, but it's expensive to run too. So you can get them. They're not illegal. They're
Yeah.
research.
Yep.
You're your own guinea pig in a sense. But at the same time, it's like, you know, the cost versus risk too, because there's a lot more things that are cheaper.
Right.
So that are going to work just as well. And like, if you're running clean and you're sprinkling a little T3 and you're already on, high stimulants, like even like a trend that, stimulates your nervous system, you're going to burn fat. Like, sure, trend doesn't burn fat, but it stimulates your nervous system enough to where it helps burn calories. Plus the thermogenic effects. There's a lot of different things that come into play with it. But as far as like Peptides, some of them are good. Like if you're not running growth hormone, I think like IPAM and Cimarillin um, are good to play with because they'll stimulate your natural growth, your release of growth hormone. But it's not like you're doing real growth hormone.
Right.
To a super physiological, it's not like you're blasting 8 or 10 IU's a day of the real stuff. So like exogenous injected growth hormone is going to have a big different effect than what your natural pituitary gland is going to release from a peptide injection. You know what I mean? It's just going to release a little bit extra versus a whole hell of a lot. It's like throwing a cup of gasoline on a fire versus dumping a little bit of diesel fuel. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So like the MK677, it claims that it boosts your IGF levels too, right?
It's there's a lot of claims. The thing about a lot of the peptides is there's no real long-term studies and no randomized studies in humans. There's a lot of stuff on lab rats and things like that. Um, so just wanted to, you just got to keep things in perspective. You know what I mean? So like for me, when I get to see a PubMed study, I want to see a randomized clinical study. What are the each group has that type of thing? What's the testing? What is the baseline that we're comparing the data against? And there's just nothing like that when it comes to this stuff. So it's all kind of new. So
Yeah.
it's still a lot of it's guesswork. They can make a lot of claims to a lot of BS, but it is what it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that picture that you sent me, dude, for the cover photo, what all were you on in that picture? Because you look insane.
I think I was really I wasn't even near a show then. I think I was just single.
Uh-huh.
So, I think that was after my first divorce because I still owned the gym. I think I was just on test and I was probably doing a little bit of tren and some masteron. That was it. That's it. So, and it wasn't anything at like a crazy high dose, but my diet was probably pretty clean too, because I was just in the bachelor. I was living in an apartment, and eating egg whites and chicken and rice, and it's the same kind of stuff I do now. But I don't, hammer my free meal with sushi or anything like that, like I'm doing now, trying to grow a little bit. But yeah, that was it. Nothing too bad. I was training 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days, something like that. So nothing too crazy. So
What is your view on overtraining? If you're on TRT or taking any type of enhancement drugs.
I think the biggest thing is that most people just don't rest enough. They really don't. Like for me, like in order to make a muscle grow, you have to isolate it. So for me, I have shoulder day, I have back day, I have legs, I have arms, I have chest, and I'll throw in some auxiliary movements like some abs here or there, that type of thing. But you really isolate, and like when I'm really getting hardcore, I'll have a quad day. And then I'll have a hamstring day. So I'll split my leg day, and I'm just isolating the hell out of that muscle. But it takes time to recover that. So the biggest thing is making sure that you have enough recovery in there, because especially with your legs, such a big muscle group, and even your back, those two big lifts need the most time between them. So the big thing that I would say is that you can definitely overtrain your legs if you're trying to grow them, other than your calves. You can train the shit out of your calves. You can put the volume to them because they recover so fast because you use them in every step you take. Literally, you're using your calf muscles. But as far as like your quads and your hamstrings, when you're pushing that much blood to such a big muscle, they take time to recover. And in order to build tissue, you gotta let them heal. Back's the same way. Chest not so much, but arms too. Like because you're using the thing. I don't train arms that much. People are like, oh my god, dude, your triceps are ridiculous. I'm like, I don't even know, dude. Like, I maybe do 6 or 7 sets a week for my arms. That's it. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
crazy. And they used to be a weak part. But when I do them now, like I'm so focused on like slow, controlled hypertrophy that I'm pushing the blood to exactly where I want to, that it changes the effect. But I think that you can easily overtrain if you're trying to grow muscle tissue. It's like, what are you trying? Like, you just have to look at what's your end goal. Are you trying to build tissue? If you're trying to build tissue, overtraining is not good. You can easily overtrain. If you're trying to build strength, you can easily overtrain. So you've just got to kind of figure out where your sweet spot is on this, and then kind of judge it. And like like I know when I get under the bar, if I'm like, ooh, today's gonna suck. I'm a little tired.
Right.
You know what I mean? That first set feels heavy. You're like, ooh, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we've all been there, and so it's like, was your nutrition on point? Did your weight drop? Um, did you get a good night's sleep? Just the certain variables that you can look back in hindsight and say, I may not just go completely what I call stirring the tank. So that's what some of the lifts that I'll like. If I'm going hard and like I literally have butterflies in my stomach because I know the workout's fixing to suck that bad. That's what
Yeah.
I call stir. That's what I call it because you're scraping the tank. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to get all the paint out of the bucket.
Right.
And that's those workouts are pretty brutal. So sometimes I'll pull back if like even that was my mentality walking in the gym. If I know that like I'm not there, I'm not progressing if I do that. So it's just having some self awareness as to where you are and what you want to do long term as to how you're going to structure certain things. Sometimes you just got to play on the fly. You know what I mean? Just like, because you may get sick, you may
Yeah.
whatever. So it's being able to not be a weenus, you know what I mean, and talk and
Right.
renegotiate yourself and be like, okay, this is gonna suck. The reason I'm not gonna do this is because it's gonna suck.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just one of those weird things. So
Yeah, yeah. Now I have days like that too, where I'm just like, "Oh, this workout is about to suck, man," and you just muscle through it, and most of the time they do suck, but it's like, after you leave, you're like, "Yeah, I did that." You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like, it's not always a good workout. You can't always have a good workout. You know?
no, dude, no. Sometimes you're just gonna go through the motions, and sometimes just walking through those doors
Yep.
is therapy. You know what I mean? Just like,
Yep.
okay, well, I made it here. Let's get some shit done. Let's whatever it takes. That type of thing. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that's important too, just for the mentality of it, because we try to renegotiate with ourselves and give ourselves all the reasons in the world not to even go.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, I feel like that was one of the things that in my early stages I had to get out of the habit of, and so there is no negotiating. We'll get in there. We'll do a few sets. Once the blood's moving a little bit, I'll feel better, and that's typically what happens. But some days I have to let off the gas, and that's okay too. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but recovery, just because you're on TRT doesn't mean that you're super physiological and your healing is going to be so much faster. You've got to take time to dial it back a little bit, make sure that you're eating, because the more you rest, the easier it's going to be when it comes to dieting, your dieting phase, as well as just overall progress. I tell I had a guy come up to me in the gym. He's training 7 days a week, and he has for years. I'm like, bro, how are you not dead? Like,
Right.
you know, like you need to take 2 days off at least, man. Like, come on
Wow.
now. I'm like, dude. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm just not getting stronger. I'm like, no shit. Like, no,
Right.
duh. You're not going to progress when you get to that point. So
Yeah.
it's just looking at the variables, looking at the data, and just kind of making a smart decision as to what's best. And the thing is like for me as a coach, it's easy for me to coach you versus me coach myself because I'm always trying, like in my head, like I'm the example. I have to show these people that I don't dick around. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, even if it's not what's best. And so, like, if I go into like a super hard cut or something that I know I'm going to need to, I'll hire my coach. I'll call him up, but hey, dude, let's just run me through a mini cut. So that way I can just be a good soldier and just get it done and not have to think about it. Because that to me, like there's value in that. And plus, I'm not looking at the pictures. making the adjustments he is, because he's the third eye. Because we're always like, well, there's no change, and
Yep.
there could be a ton of change. You know what I mean? So we're always going to be way harder on ourselves versus another person. So it's that's just a little value add too. Just I do it. I legit
Yeah.
do it just for that reason. You know what I mean?
So you definitely recommend getting a coach if you're starting to work out, even if you're not starting to work out and you've been doing it for a while. It's good to get a coach.
Well, the thing is you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? There's an ignorance tax that you're going to have to pay until you pay it. So you're either going to waste a ton of time or you're going to pay a little bit of money to somebody that you're going to learn immediately that you'll be able to apply for now and forever. And that's the beauty, dude. That was for me. That was the game changers when I hired a coach and like actually learned nutrition and actually learned how training worked and different types of training for different things that I needed. It was like someone pulled the blinders off. I was like, oh my God, this is what it's about. And so I'm never worried about going back to the fat kid because I know how to throttle everything. I know how it all works under the hood. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that to me was worth every penny I ever paid him in
Yeah.
itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember for this last show, I had a coach training me, but he wasn't like as knowledgeable as he should have been. And I stuck with him for a little bit, and then it came down, a couple, like maybe a month before my show, and my stomach was not tightening up, and I just went and hired this other coach, and he was like, "Okay, we got to switch it. You got to just eat fish, just eat." It was like 6 pieces of fish a day or something, and avocado, and literally, dude, it was like listening to him. If I wouldn't have listened to him, I wouldn't have been able to step on stage. My waist would have been way
Yeah.
too big. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, and I can tell with you, you're very knowledgeable because you're saying crap that I've never even heard of. Like, I know you know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. So
Yeah.
that's why, I hope this is bringing value to people who have thought about doing it, and I wanted to say this, like, what do you say to the people who are like, um, you know, I don't I don't want to get huge like, Ronnie Coleman or whatever, or, they think they're going to blow up from just using test or something. Like they don't really put into the fact of how important it is to be on top of your nutrition or how
Uh,
much these guys really eat to get that big.
Man, like it's insane. And like what most people really don't understand is like you can want to look that way all you want, but I couldn't either. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is too is about a lot of the women that I train, like that they're scared of weight resistance. I'm like, honey, you don't have the hormones to build muscle like I do,
Right.
and it's like even just on a natural level, like females just don't build muscle like men, like
Right.
period. Like we're genetically different. And the same thing for most guys. Like if you want to look like an Abercrombie model, that's cool. But at the same time, you're still going to have to lift heavy. You're still going to have to work hard. You're still going to have to, your diet has to be on point. Those guys, one, they're either like 120 pounds soaking wet and they're naturally, skinny, or they're dieting extremely hard for a photo shoot. And they look
Right.
that way for one day. That's the thing it's a perception thing that I think a lot of people are skewed on. And like most bodybuilders don't look that way. Like they'll do all their photo shoots right after a show. Like if you go to the Arnold, there'll be photographers there doing right before and right after. So they have that look and that's what's in the magazines and on the websites all year long because they're only doing one show. They don't look like that all year. You know what
Right.
I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's an illusion. But I think that a lot of people just have the misconception like even if you wanted to look that way, you couldn't. You know what I mean? Same
Yeah.
with me. Like even if I wanted to, I couldn't, because it takes years and years and years to blow up. And trust me, all the testosterone you want in the world, just because you put a needle in your butt, doesn't negate the hard work it takes to build a good physique. I tell that to everybody. When you walk in, you see somebody in the gym with a good physique. they've worked hard for it. Whether they've taken PEDs or not, they have busted their tail for it. Like, you can't take
Absolutely.
away a good physique and what it takes to build one. So that's what I always try to say. Like, yeah, they may look scary and mean, but they've worked their butt off. They're a workhorse. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that you understand that now, being in the position that you're in, competing, being backstage at a show, you know what it takes. So it's
Yeah.
like, because you see and it's, you're like a Roman slave backstage. It's not just naked dudes getting tanned and just, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a weird, cool experience, but
Right.
you see how much work goes into just stepping on stage. And
Yeah.
it's months and months and months of work that goes into it. So, like I say, they can want to try to do that, but it's not gonna happen overnight. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen. And I think that was the one of the coolest moments of my life was doing that show for the first time, and I do plan on doing another one, but there was no other feeling like it, man. It was just so amazing. I was nervous at first, and then, I got out there and I'm like, well, I'm here. I might as well just, show what I've worked so hard for. And, I could have looked better, but I felt like I did the best I could for the amount of time I had. And, just the feeling, man. I've never felt that feeling before. It was amazing.
How long was your prep for?
It's about, dude, I only prepped for like 2 months and maybe a week.
Oh, really?
I did it.
Bro,
I did
you're
it
so
fast,
lucky.
dude, and I wore a waist trainer as tight as I could for those 2 months. Like I wore that waist trainer to where I could barely breathe.
That's wild. I trained for a year, and then I prepped. I was in prep for 6 months,
Wow.
20,
Okay.
24 weeks. And so, like, the beginning of prep, it wasn't too bad, but it was very, very, very gradual. And this was for my first show. It was very gradual, and then it got suckier and suckier. And then by like at the 8 week mark, you just 12 weeks, I was like, man, this is never going to end. This is
Yeah.
I'm 12 weeks out. This is horrible. Because I was kind of at the midway point, and I was like, this sucks so bad. I was like, I felt like on Step Brothers, like I'm on planet hell. You know what I mean, or whatever that meme is that him and Dale and Brandon are talking about. Like, what
Yeah.
planet are we on? That's how I felt, and it was just like continuously got worse. But then, like, once I was 6 weeks out, um, I could see the finish line. And then 4 weeks out, I was like, all right, I got this. And then the second show that I did, I dieted down so hard, and I tried a different coach for this. I dieted down so hard. He came walked into the gym, my old coach, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" I'm like, "I guess so." And he's like, "Call me whenever you get done." And so we had a conversation. He's like, "Do you look like shit?" he's like, you. My body was literally eating itself. I was dieting so hard and doing so much cardio. This coach was just like turning the gas, and I was on like poverty macros. And then Matt saw me and he was like, "Dude, you do not look good." He's like, "Just call me." And so we talked. He's like, "This is what you need to do." And so he gave me a refeed. And then I started losing weight. And then I was dieting going into that show on like 4,500 calories a day. Like,
Wow.
because my metabolism was so suppressed and just needed fuel. And I was so lean as it was. I dieted into that show for the last 4 weeks on 4,500 calories a day. It was
Wow.
nuts. It was nuts, dude. So and I was still hungry. I was still just as miserable eating 4,500 calories as I was like 1,800. So it was just a weird thing. Like I said, that's what makes me understand how incredible the human body is, because it's going to make you survive.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you put it under, and that's the part of like dieting and being kind of gradual with it. It's the important part. Like, because and there's going to be times where you got to make a big pull, but at the same time, your body is going to adjust to whatever stress you put it under. Whatever you put it under the bar, it's going to make you stronger. If you pull calories from it and do extra cardio, guess what? It's going to make you more efficient. And so it's going to pull your metabolism down. You're going to be more tired and want to sleep and not do the things that you need to do when you're a functioning adult. So it's just one of those things too, to keep that thing going, the whole prep through some refeeds, being strategic, seeing how your body responds. Those are really important things, I think, when you've got a good coach to look out for, because you can't just, it's like driving a Lamborghini. You can't drive it in first gear on the floor on the red line. It's going to blow up eventually. And that's kind of what some of these prep coaches do, is they just throw a bunch of supplements at you,
Yeah.
pull a bunch of calories, and then cardio you to death and expect you to look good. You'll be flat as a pancake when you stand on stage. Your muscles aren't going to even look around. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, it's a balancing act. And I think that was the good thing, is like being coached by somebody that was really smart and good taught me what was right and what was wrong. Being around other coaches that were really smart and really good helped me become a good coach, helped me be empathetic to what these guys, because they're under a lot of pressure too, you know. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting dynamic to be on that side of it, because I've prepped clients and they've peaked great, and then I've peaked clients and it wasn't as what I wanted. They were happy, but I wasn't what I wanted, because I think they could have been a little bit more crisp. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's one of those, they did way better than they expected to. You
So
know, and so
where?
for
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying, so you know, in the end they were happy, but for me as a coach, like, I'm beating myself up. That's the whole, like, you know,
Yeah.
being harder on yourself than you are anyone else.
So when you're getting people ready for a show, how long do you usually make them prep for?
It depends a little bit. Typically, I would like 16 weeks, just so I can understand their metabolism, so I can make a calorie pool. I can see what they're eating, kind of track things a little bit before we get into, like, because the last 12 weeks are really the most critical. And if you're already in a good spot, and it depends, like, if you've got more body fat to lose, I'll be like, dude, you're not going to be ready to stand on stage in 8 weeks. Like, if you came to me let's say I was coaching you and you came to me, I'm going to be honest with you. I'll be like, bro, you're not going to be ready. You know, let's pick a
Yeah.
different show a little bit later. If you
Right.
want to look your best, or you can do it, but just know that, like, you're not going to bring your best. If you're going to kill
Right.
yourself for 8 weeks, I'd rather you kill yourself for 16 and you be the man, and potentially win your class or compete for the overall, whatever it may be. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's just,
Right.
you have to be honest with your clients, and that's the thing, is I can blow smoke up anybody, but, oh, dude, you'll be the next Olympian in 8 weeks. Come here, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, no. Yeah, and then the thing is I don't want to do long term damage to them either, because my agreement with every client is we reverse out. You give me at least 6 weeks out so we can reverse diet you out. Because what happens after a show? You go back to eating a bunch of crap, and guess what? You put on all the body fat and then some that you lost.
Yep.
Am I right?
100%, dude.
And so with my female clients, it's even more important, because most of them, men are pretty resilient, but females, dude, it's really, really hard for them to get back to a good metabolic state unless you do it right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I think this is about to cut out on us, dude. We've been on here an
all
hour.
right, damn,
I
I'm
think it
sorry.
cuts out at an hour.
No worries, man. No worries, buddy. Well, I appreciate the time, dude. Thanks for letting me come on and jabber again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude, man. I hope, people got some value out of this. I know I did, dude. You just schooled the crap out of me, man. I can tell you are a very, very knowledgeable man when it comes to fitness, dude.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate that.
so anything going on with your Endure? You got anything you want to throw out there?
If anybody's interested in coaching, just send a DM to Matt Endure Coaching on IG. Look me up on Facebook, Matt McCutcheon, TikTok. I think it's Matt Endure Coaching there as well too. And just shoot me a DM, and then we can set up a Zoom call and make it happen.
Sounds good, brother. Well, thank you for hopping on here, man.
All right, buddy. Thanks, Cody. Appreciate it, man. See you
All
guys.
right, you have a good one, brother.
See you, man.